Mayor of Jacksonville. Donna, how are you this morning?
I am well, Al. How are you doing?
I am so good. So it's been 100 days that you've been in office, and you have had a crazy first 100 days. I think every politician, when they have 100 days, will say, oh, it's been crazy. But for you, it's really been crazy. You had a hurricane, a mass shooting, all sorts of things going on. How has it been for you?
Well, look, I'm sort of built for this, right? Because in all the years in media, you're basically responding to one crisis after another.
Yeah.
It's very much crisis management, and that's very much what this job has been like so far.
Yeah, I think, to start it off, I think I want to focus in on, one of the biggest crises that you had was the mass shooting at Family Dollar,
Yeah.
or Dollar General, excuse me. Can you tell me about that day? I mean, I remember when it happened, you were there on the scene pretty quickly.
Yeah.
What was it that drew you out there, and what did you learn in the time, like, dealing with this?
Well, as soon as I got the message that it had happened, I got in the car and went straight there. I wanted to be with the community because I knew the pain. I knew the PTSD. I knew the pain. I knew what people were going to be going through, and I wanted to be there.
Yeah. I think one of the things, so I'm actually, my other job as host of Reveal, we are currently working on an hour about Florida. And
Only an hour?
well, that's all they would give
No,
me.
I'm kidding. I mean, I don't know how you get to Florida in an hour, but,
No,
but good luck to you.
Listen, I'm lobbying for 5 hours, but we'll start with one. But one of the things that when I was reporting on what happened with the shooting that was really clear to me is that that area, this is maybe feels like a little bit of a tangent, but that area, Newtown, is primarily a food desert.
Mm-hmm.
And so people were going to the Dollar General as, using it as somewhat as a grocery store.
Yes.
And so when that incident happened, it got shut down, so forth and so on. I'm curious though, like what local government can do to help with food deserts across the city, because Jacksonville is huge,
Right.
and there are a lot of places where, that like Newtown are in that place where they don't have access to fresh food.
Well, look, especially in that area, I think it's very important for us to get creative in that regard. I think there's a lot of people that are very reticent to go back over there to that Dollar General regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Creates too much pain. So actually, I have been speaking with President Faison over at EWU about a new community center that they want to build that may have the opportunity to have some fresh produce, a place where people can come and shop in it, in addition to some student housing and other things. And I'm hoping to connect to the folks at Dollar General who have said they're very interested in continuing to help the community, especially with things like fresh fruit and foods and amenities that the community needs. Look, with communities like Newtown and others, we have to, it's one thing to give lip service to this stuff and say we want to change things, but we really have to act on those things. And there are a number of opportunities we have to try to bring in fresh produce, whether it comes down to talking about properties that have been abandoned or lots that are available, or working with companies to create more availability. I think EWU is very focused on that, in addition to some other folks in that area. But it's something that we have to address because we have a lot of those in Jacksonville, and people should have the expectation that they can have healthy foods that are close by.
Yeah. Recently, after the shooting, the sheriff talked a little bit about that he had been talking to the president, and the president said that he felt like white supremacy was one of the major issues facing this country. And the sheriff felt like actually it's not, that it's more about categorizing the way he spoke about it, is that it's more like black on black crime. I don't believe in that idea, because we don't call crime that happens in white communities white on white crime. And basically, violence happens in the community that you live in.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you live in a white neighborhood, then violence in that white neighborhood is going to happen between white people. If you blah blah blah, like America is still so segregated, and definitely Jacksonville. I take issue with the way he described it, but I understand what he is trying to say, that violence is an issue in the community. I also take issue that he talked about that people don't get as excited or don't talk as much about that. And I think there are a lot of people that are trying to make change in Jacksonville and have been trying to make change for, as long as I can remember. So
Yeah.
it's been an issue that people are trying to tackle. Can you talk to me a little bit about like what your administration is thinking about when it comes to these issues in violence within the community?
Well, look, to me, and I've said this repeatedly, it is the sheriff's job to have law enforcement presence and to do what law enforcement does in terms of trying to curb crime. He and I obviously have some disagreements in terms of systemic racism. I believe that if you have to go all the way back to why some of these things begin to happen, everything from poverty to redlining to you just have to look at step by step what has happened to the black community to understand why we are where we are with some of those situations. I will say that I do give him credit for more transparency on those issues. He's been out there, he's been talking to the community, he's doing community walks again. I think he has certainly made an effort toward more transparency with that community. And I'll tell you, Al, it is very interesting when I hold all these community meetings. There are a lot of people that will speak up and say, I want more police officers in my neighborhood. I don't ever see police officers in my neighborhood. We have to have more. So it's really juxtaposed against all. There are. I think people assume that in the black community there's this feeling of frustration with the police, and I think in some ways that is true for a variety of reasons. But I think also there is a desire for more protection. So it's interesting to me, and I think that the sheriff certainly understands that there are people who want that more protection. I think where I would like to see us spend more time on the city side is in prevention, intervention programs that would alleviate poverty. The things that we are focused on, especially in terms of this year's budget, almost $3 million in additional youth programs. I think things like that are incredibly important. Literacy: 70% of our kids that are in jail cannot read at a fourth grade level. That eventually leads to issues like this. So I think that for me, what I can do is I can focus on things like that and housing and homelessness and the things that can feed into all this, all the drivers and ways that we can prevent people from falling into a situation where they fall into crime. But certainly, I also think that guns are a problem, and I'd like to see us. Obviously, the state has made it impossible to do anything on a local level as far as guns are concerned. But I would love to see us address what I think is clearly the elephant in the room, and that is the easy availability of these high-powered weapons and guns that seem to be everywhere in our community.
Yeah, just want to go back a little bit and more of a comment to something that you said. I agree that communities, specifically black communities throughout the entire country, want to be protected. But I also think that along with that protection has to come accountability.
Absolutely,
right?
sure.
And so, and that is something that that really I should be talking to the sheriff about. But he will not come on this program and talk to me. But
he did come on the program, I think, a couple weeks ago, right?
He loves to talk to Dan.
Okay.
So, but I'll just say that like accountability along with protection is key because that's the way you build back trust in the community.
Yes.
If there's a loss of trust, the only way to bring it back is through accountability, and I think that's what a lot of advocates would
I think,
say.
yeah, and I think through presence and relationships.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's one of the reasons we've talked so much about bringing back elements of the Jacksonville journey, and part of that is community policing, which I think that he has begun to put together his picture of what that looks like. So I think some of it is building those relationships in the community, but then yes, I think I think being able to answer questions from the community when they don't necessarily like everything that you're doing. And
Yeah.
and like I said, I will say for him that he does seem to be more present than our previous sheriff has in terms of answering those questions.
Well, he lives in the city, so
Yeah, yeah. Well, there you go. So that's a step in the right
that's
direction
a
right
step in
there.
the right
Yeah.
direction. You brought it up. I was going to move into that next, the Jacksonville journey, which you know, it seems to me that was probably one of the most successful programs that we had to try and curb violence, but also like bring the community together.
Hmm.
And you talked a little bit about like taking elements of that. Like what exactly are you taking from the Jacksonville journey and implementing now?
Well, for me, it comes down to a lot of those programs that we were talking about earlier. 3.6 million that we're going to be putting into early literacy. I think that probably the most significant thing that we can do for our children is make sure that they can read at grade level, because that sets them up for success. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. We have got to make sure our kids can read, and then beyond that, I think we have to give them opportunities to have things to do. We're spending more money on our pools, which were woefully inadequate last summer, right? We're spending more money on internship programs at the city, where we can have young people that can come in and spend time to see if they would like to try on a job at city government. There are all sorts of things that we're doing, increasing community programs that we think will be good for youth, and those sorts of things. But also to the things you're talking about, housing, food deserts. Those issues are all things we're addressing in this year's budget. And I think it's not going to happen overnight, Al, but I think that the more we can focus intensely on those neighborhoods that we have neglected over the last 50 years, the better success that we're going to have.
And we're going to take our first call. This is, let's see. This is Kate. Kate, how are you today?
Good morning. I first want to say thank you, Donna, for being the Grand Marshal of the Pride Parade. It is so nice to finally be proud of something great that a mayor did in Jacksonville.
Well, that was my pleasure. Thank you.
And my question to you is, I'm actually a member of Take 'em Down Jacks, and my friends and I have been talking ourselves blue in the face to the city council about taking these monuments down. What are the next steps that you would like to see happen?
Well, I'll tell you that I certainly need to have some more conversation with council in terms of any desire they might have to take those down or to move them. At this point, I haven't seen a great deal of movement there, but we need to have those conversations. Beyond that, I remain committed to making sure that we take them down. I have said that since the campaign. I'm looking at every possible option that we have in that regard. I'm not ready to tell you anything specific there, but I will tell you that we are working very hard to figure out how we get there. I was grateful to see in the latest round of polling that the numbers seem to be moving on that, where we now have a majority of folks in our city. Not that you can always go by what the majority thinks, but it's nice to see people's opinions moving on that. And I think when you have situations like the mass shooting, where you see someone who puts out basically a document that talks about his hatred of black people, I think you start to understand that in our community we have to do everything that we can to say with one voice that we don't accept that type of ideology. That we're not trying to go back and blame a previous group of people for anything, but what we are doing is saying, now we know better, let's do better at the very least. And so I think to do better means to take those monuments at the very least out of neighborhoods, black neighborhoods, where people have to see them all the time, as a, frankly, nod to white supremacy. And I don't think that is something that is helpful in our city, either for our community or for our business community or any of us, frankly. So we will come up with a solution for that.
You're listening to First Coast Connect. I'm Al Letson, sitting down with our esteemed mayor, Donna Deegan. You can join the conversation at 549-2937. I'll just warn you once again that our phone lines are kind of sort of working. We can't do what we normally would do, which was have a bunch of cold callers on hold and then bring them in as we move the conversation along. But you can still call in. So please give us a call at 549-2937 and be nice to my staff, please. Be nice to my staff. That's a very important thing.
Oh, are people not nice to your staff?
People are not nice because the
Oh.
phones aren't working and they get frustrated. I understand frustration.
Yeah.
You as the mayor understand people's
I
frustration.
100% do, but obviously not the staff's fault. that the phones
Exactly.
aren't
Not
working.
their
Yeah.
fault. Technical difficulties. You can tweet us at FCC On Air. You can email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, all the places. You know where to look for us. We have a question from, let's see, Brian on the platform X. I don't like this Twitter. It's Twitter. Brian's on Twitter. And he said, Mayor
I call it
Deegan,
Twitter, too. I
It's
still
Twitter.
call it
It's
Twitter,
Twitter.
yeah.
It's Twitter. Is the job harder than you expected, easier, or about what you expected?
I would say it's about what I expected. There are elements of it, obviously, that I like more than other elements. As I've said from the very beginning, I think when you want unity, that means ultimately you are solution oriented. And that means that you're going to try to bring together commonalities from everybody to try to move the ball forward in this city in so many ways, but that's going to frustrate some people, right? So I do think that the politics is not something I am incredibly fond of, but I knew it was going to be part of the job. But I do enjoy being in the chair and being able to sink millions of dollars into what I hope are programs that will help the infrastructure in our city, our health, our small businesses, and beyond. And so I think the only way to really influence those things is to be in the chair. And so I am enjoying in that way being in the chair.
Yeah. I just think about the job and politics. And one of my heroes, Bayard Rustin, the man who taught Martin Luther King the practice of nonviolence, and also he was behind the March on Washington. He's an amazing man that, for the most part has been written out of history because he was a gay black man during the civil rights struggle. But one thing that he talked a lot about with politics was the idea that politics are about what's possible and how you make things possible. And the way you make a path forward is by figuring out how to compromise on the things you can compromise with people that you don't necessarily agree with.
That's right.
That's a really hard thing to do, to figure out how to move forward by giving a little, taking a little, giving a little, taking a little.
That's right. I don't get to be queen. I have 19 council people, each of whom have their own priorities for their own districts or areas of town, and I get that. And so what I have tried to do with this budget and in my relationship building with them is find where we have common ground, find where we can move the dial forward together, with the understanding that some of them have political futures in mind and that they're going to take part in what I not so affectionately call the political theater that is politics.
Yes.
But that's going to happen, and I get it. So far I think we've done a really good job of moving past a couple of bumps, but of getting a budget together that really is going to be transformative.
Yeah. Let's go to the phones. We've got Chrissy from the West Side. Chrissy, how are you this morning?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I just have a question for Mayor Deegan on how are you trying to support the Duval County school system right now during the transportation crisis that we're having? Because it's affecting a lot of working parents who can't necessarily get their kids to and from school and are having to leave work to pick up their students when there aren't buses available, because that's really affecting their jobs and their ability to keep a job if they're having to constantly leave to get their students because bus drivers aren't available.
Yeah, I understand. Now, obviously, that we have an elected school board and at least a superintendent that is serving at the moment, and Donna Christner. So we have certainly conversation back and forth between our department, our administration and the school board, where we are actually we're actually talking over the idea of having somebody who's a liaison specifically to the school board. But that is primarily not something that we deal with in the mayor's office. But I certainly understand the the frustration on that front.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit, speaking about frustrations, I wanted to ask you a little bit about two people that you've tried to bring into your administration. One, Randy DeFore, and then the other, Parvez, I always get his last name wrong.
Ahmed?
I'm sorry. Ahmed, excuse me. Parvez Ahmed. Parvez, I'm so sorry. I always mess up your name. Just like the engineer here, Randy. I don't know what it is. I called him Randy. Brady, excuse me. I always mess up the name.
We all have blocks. We all have those
blocks.
mental blocks.
I
yes.
love Brady, though. I love Brady. He's my dude. Tell me about the fight to get them confirmed, and ultimately, like when it came to Randy DeFore, she ended up, stepping down from her nomination.
Well, let me say first off that Parvez Ahmed is our director of diversity and inclusion, and he is in city government and will remain there.
Okay.
Randy was a nominee for general counsel, probably the most qualified nominee for general counsel that we have ever had. But ultimately, the politics got in the way a bit there, and I think she and I finally just got to the point where we thought this is, she called and said this is doing more harm than good at this point, and I'm going to remove myself. And I was frankly, Al, a bit taken aback by all of it. As I said early on, I had heard that the previous administration, especially Brian Hughes, had basically said he was not a fan of hers and was going to try to fight that nomination. I did not initially get the idea there was going to be so much opposition to that nomination. So I will simply say that I think Randy is an amazing human being who would have been an outstanding general counsel. She will continue to be a friend, and I believe that the person who is in there now, Michael Fackler, will do a wonderful job. So we've ended up with somebody who I believe is very good. But I was very disappointed to see how all of that went down. But you know what? That's all part of the job. You don't get everything you want, and that's something that I've said from the very beginning that people have to get used to. When you talk about compromising, when you talk about the administration and 19 council members, there are not going to be times you get what you want.
Yeah.
And we have to move through and continue to connect the dots on the things that we can.
When it comes to DEI, my recollection is, a week before the mass shooting, the Republicans on the council were like, we don't need this position because we don't.
Well, it was the finance committee. It wasn't the entire council.
Yeah, excuse me. The finance committee was like, we don't need this. We don't need this position anymore. And then the mass shooting happens, which kind of reminds us all that there is a need for that type of position. So how have you been dealing with the council when it comes to that, to the DEI, your drive and vision with that?
Well, first of all, council, what the finance committee did, they can't remove a position from my administration. What they did was they declined to fund it. Mm-hmm. So because this is a strong mayor form of government, we can go and take money from other places and move that into to fund that position. I think they really just wanted to make a statement that was not something they felt was necessary, and they didn't want to fund it. Ultimately, I didn't ask the entire council to go back and vote on the whole thing. Look, I understand political realities for people. That is one of the things that I need to be mindful of. There are people that feel very much that they need to walk in lockstep with the governor or with their party, and I'm not. It's not my goal to put them in a difficult position. But at the end of the day, that is an extraordinarily important position for us as a city. We need to heal. We need to bring everybody's voice into the room, and I think that mass shooting just put into stark relief the need to have that sort of a person who can bring those voices in.
And I'm going to go to the phones again. We've got Valencia from the north side. Valencia, how are you this morning?
I'm great. Good morning.
Good morning, Valencia.
Mayor. Thank you for taking my call. I want to let you know I am the grandmother of Kayla Marie Matthews, who we just laid to rest this past weekend. So my question is very personal and specific. What is the sheriff's office, the mayor's office, doing step by step to alleviate gun violence, gang violence, whatever is going on in this city? No parent, no grandparent should have to lay a 3-year-old to rest. And it's not just guns. We're talking rifles. So I need to know, and I need to hear from my elected officials, what are you doing? The only acknowledgement that we received was from Representative Angela Dixon. I haven't heard from anyone else. And I check in with the detective just to see if we've made any headway on possible suspects.
Well, first of all, let me say how terribly sorry I am. Obviously, incredibly heartbreaking to lose anyone, especially children. And this is the dilemma that we have with gun violence in our community and our country. I believe that what the sheriff, and I'll let him speak for himself on these issues, but I believe what I have heard him say, and one of the programs that we are working to do together is to have some PSAs about safe gun storage. You know, some of these situations where children are killed is because another child picks up a gun because it wasn't stored properly. That was not obviously the situation for you. But these are all manners of gun violence. And from my perspective, and I will only speak for me here, I think that it is the easy availability of these what I call weapons of war. These automatic or semi-automatic weapons with large capacity magazines that can kill so many people so quickly. But I need to be clear with you on the fact that state law makes it impossible for us to have any sort of impact on local gun laws. We used to be able to legislate gun law in our own communities. We cannot do that anymore. We are not permitted by law to do that. So what can I do? As I said earlier, what I can do from the mayor's office is to focus on those things that I believe can draw people into that sort of a lifestyle. I can educate them on guns. I can certainly speak out about the fact that I would hope that people would not avail themselves of these guns. But at the end of the day, it comes down to me of programs that I can do to make people's lives less susceptible to crime. And that is literacy programs, that is youth programs, that is housing programs, programs that help kids get into the arts, things that will take their focus into a new direction. But if anyone tells you they have an easy solution to this problem, I don't know what it is, given the fact that we don't have a lot of control locally over what we can do in terms of guns. That's why I always tell people elections matter, and you need to make sure that you're looking at people's stances on these things, and make sure that we're putting folks in office that understand that we have to make sure that our folks are safe.
And we're going to go to the phones again. We've got Tom on the west side. Tom, how are you this morning?
I'm wonderful, and good morning to you all both.
Morning, Tom.
My concern here is the city trying to do two major projects in one in terms of the stadium renovation and building a new jail. I'm not sure if that's the fiscally responsible way we want to go when we're struggling already to maintain the roads, and they're declining rather badly.
Well, Tom, I appreciate the point, and what I have said repeatedly in terms of I think at this point the jail is simply a study, so that is not something that we are investing in at this point. As far as the stadium goes, obviously that's a deal that we hope to get done sooner rather than later. But I don't believe that a city of our size and being the city that, in my mind, that we want to be, I don't think we have to choose between whether we fund our roads and whether we improve our stadium and the surrounding neighborhoods to our stadium. I think that we can do both things, and I think we can do that because we have a growing city, which means we have more people moving in here, buying property, paying property taxes. I think we can do all that without raising taxes. And I think that as far as the stadium goes, we may need to come up with some innovative ways to get that done. But at the end of the day, I reject the argument that we cannot do both. We are a large city. We have to get our priorities right. My number one priority, as I have said repeatedly all through the campaign and today, is infrastructure. And if you look at where the huge majority of the $25 million, that we are allotting to programs, but also in that we have focused on the CIP, it is towards things that will improve the lives of our neighborhoods and make people's lives better. And that's everything from infrastructure to all the programs that we've talked about, this morning. So, look, I know everybody is anxious about this. We have 80% of the folks out there that don't want to spend public dollars on a stadium, and we have 80% of the folks that do not want to lose the Jacksonville Jaguars, and those two things are mutually exclusive. So we've got to come up with the best deal we can come up with for the city, and move us forward. And my hope is that becomes an economic development conversation where we're actually doing some really good work for our surrounding neighborhoods while we're in this process. So hang with me on it. I think we have both things in mind, and I think if you look at how we're allocating our funds and what we're focused on, I think we're going to end up being able to do both things.
When I think about, the caller mentioned the jail, and when I think about the jail and Council President Salem's desire to move the jail, the thing that I keep going back to is at least from the council president, there's a lot of desire to move the jail.
Yeah.
But I don't hear a lot of talk about stopping the deaths at the jail, like the people within the jail. And I'm much more concerned about the human lives that we are losing in Jacksonville jails, in the Jacksonville jail, than actually moving in a real estate deal. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts about that aspect of the jail.
Well, obviously that's a concern. I'm sure it's a concern for the sheriff as well. It's why he, I believe, changed the company that provides health care for the jail. There is also the option at some point to discuss, depending on how that goes, whether we can also take a look at perhaps providing health care through UF Health or something like that, if that's not something that actually ends up improving the outcomes there. But that's not a place where we are yet in terms of those discussions. That will ultimately be something that I think the future will determine. But it's obviously a concern. I think that any time we put somebody in a situation where they are incarcerated, they should expect to receive, the same care that they would receive if they were not incarcerated,
right, in
terms of their health. I mean, so I understand why that's a concern, and it is for me as well. We're watching that, obviously.
And we're going to go to the phones. We've got Letitia Woods. Letitia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
How are you this morning?
I'm not doing too good. I'm hanging in there, though.
Good morning, Letitia. It's good to speak with you again.
Yeah, I've been waiting for you to call me back all week.
Well, I enjoyed our conversation, and as much as we can enjoy any conversation that involves those sorts of things, but I don't recall that we were scheduled for another conversation. I told you I would speak with the sheriff, which I did.
And you would get back with me
and
let me know.
Well, I spoke with the sheriff, and he said that he did check on your son to make sure that he was okay. I know that was your number one concern, was his health. It was our number one concern as well.
But he's not getting any care in there. He's still bleeding. He has a ruptured kidney, and he's still
can we
blood.
Can we pause for a second, and can you tell us who you are and your story, just for our listeners who don't know?
I'm Letitia Woods. I'm the parent of LaKen Woods, the young man that was beaten brutally by GSO officers. I spoke with Donna this week, and she said she would speak to people. I was trying to figure out where's the transparency that everybody's preaching. And Donna said she was going to get in there and clean up JSO. So my son's not getting medical treatment. He's still pissing blood. His eyes are still swollen. He had bleeding from his brain. He had a swollen, like the health that he needs, he's not getting in there.
Well,
so my main concern is his health.
I understand.
And he's not getting any health treatment.
Well, what the sheriff explained to me, or what he told me, was that Lekeon was taken to the hospital where he was treated. And when I told him I had spoken to you and you had concerns about his kidney and about internal bleeding, he said that he checked on Lekeon and that he was doing fine, and that he would monitor the situation. I think that because there is clearly, some legal activity involved around this case, I think he has probably been hesitant to speak to you personally. But beyond that, he did assure me that he was checking on Lekeon and making sure that he was physically okay, and that is something that I will follow up on again. If that is not the case, then I will place another phone call. But that is what he told me, was that he was being monitored and that he seemed to be fine.
Letitia, do you know where he's at right now?
He's in JSO custody and 23-hour lockdown a day. They're not giving him anything. They're not treating him. He's still pissing blood. This is going on for a whole week now that he's been doing that.
So he's not in a medical facility. He's just in.
No, they do not have him in a medical facility. They discharged him from the hospital.
Okay, I will follow up on that again, Letitia, but because I was told that he was improving and was fine, was walking around and not. I explained all the conditions that you said that he was experiencing, and I was told that he had improved and was doing okay. So I will check back on that. Have you had the opportunity to speak with him at all?
I've been able to talk to him. He only gets to talk to us 1 hour out of the day. And he's sad, and he's upset, and he's disappointed that he was done like that. It didn't take all that for him. It didn't take all that.
Letitia, thank you so much for calling. We have to wrap this segment up because I only have Mayor Deegan, like literally for minutes left. But Mayor Deegan, you'll look into this more, and
I absolutely will. As soon as I got off the phone with her, I called the sheriff immediately and asked him to check on the young man and see how he was doing, and he told me he was doing fine. So I will follow back up on that and find out what the latest is on his health. That was obviously our number one concern as well.
Letitia, thank you so much for calling, and Letitia, if you can, give us a call back because I'd love to talk to you. Mayor Donna Deegan, Mayor of Jacksonville, thank you so much for coming in and talking to me and all of my listeners. We really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you. I always end up wishing that I had more time with you when we get a chance to talk.
Me too. And this is the last time we're going to talk under these
I've
settings.
heard. It's been a joy. I've enjoyed listening to you again, as I always do, and I'll look for what you do next.
All right.